Thank you. Please take your seats. Good evening, members, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start the meeting, I'd like to make you all aware of the following. There is no fire drill expected this evening. If the fire alarm does sound, please make your way out by the nearest emergency exit and gather in front of Runnymede Hall. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. If you are seated in the public gallery, just know that your image may become part of the broadcast. And lastly, if I could remind everyone to turn their phones to silent, please. So first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Sonia, do we have any?
Thank you. We have apologies for Councillors Gregg, Thomas and Pashy.
Thank you. And item 2 is declarations of interest. Members, are there any interests to declare? No. And item 3 is minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of October this year. Members, are the minutes of the meeting held on this date agreed? Thank you. So we have, unfortunately my chaplain is not available to attend the meeting this evening, so we have no prayers, but I will just move on to item 4. If you will indulge me a moment, I have a few announcements to make. So as we are in the Christmas season, it's been very busy with the mayoralty, and I'd like to extend huge thanks to Castle Point Leisure for hosting the Mayor's Charity Schools Christmas concert at Waterside Leisure Centre, where schools from across the borough performed with the Canvey Community Choir. The 3 performances were enjoyed by myself, my deputy, some mayors and chairs from our neighbouring boroughs, and the Deputy Lord Lieutenant of Essex. Thank you to everyone's generosity. We raised a good amount of money for the Trust Links and Indie Rose Trust, which will go towards funding some of the great work that they do supporting the people in Castle Point. I'd also like to extend my thanks to St Mary's Church, who hosted our civic carol service on the first day of Advent, and thank you to everyone who came along to enjoy the service. We managed to raise £512 for cancer research, that's right. I was also delighted to turn on the Christmas lights at Hadley this year. Huge thanks to Reverend Peter Hillman for leading the event. It was wonderful to see so many of our Hadley residents out in huge numbers despite the cold weather. And of course I've been enjoying the various events and civic carol services that I've been invited to by our neighbouring boroughs, mayors and chairs. Also thank you to Hayley Meager at the Essex Marching Corps, who are based here in Benfleet, invited me to their wonderful Christmas concert at the Holy Trinity Church in Rayleigh. My daughter and I enjoyed that very much, and also this weekend my daughter and I have been enjoying going to the various Christmas events that have been on. It's been very busy. We went to the Castle Point Leisure's open day at Runnymede Hall. A huge success, over 500 people in attendance there, the first time we've hosted it at Runnymede, and there's another one on next weekend at Waterside. Also visited Santa's Grotto at Morrison's at Hadley, and the Havens Hospice Light Up a Life memorial service at the Temple, also on Sunday. During my 18 months now as Mayor of the Borough, I've yet to cut a ribbon up until recently. Much like buses, they came along 2 at once. So I was delighted to attend the USP Civic campus, who have opened an amazing new building, providing students with a wonderful high-tech learning suite over there. And also one of last year's Mayor's Business Award winners, Victoria Kelly, invited me to cut the ribbon at her new business at Schaefer's at Tarpots, Chairway to Heaven. And I wish her every success with that, which reminds me that nominations for the Mayor's Business Awards are now open, and you can visit online on the council website for applications to that. And I will be looking forward to a few more events before the big day is upon us. And we shall move on to item 5, which is questions from the public. Members, there are no questions have been received. Item 6, questions from members of the council. Again, members, there are none. And item 7, business from last council meeting. Members, again, there are none. Item 8 is urgent decisions taken by council. Again, there are none, members. So given that we have residents in attendance tonight regarding the petition in item 18 of the agenda, I'd like to move a motion without notice that we take item 18 next. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Backwell. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. So item 18 is petitions submitted by members of the public. I'll invite the Chief Executive, Ms Hutchins, to introduce her report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, members. The petition's call for action is articulated as we, the undersigned, call on Castle Point Borough Council to accept this petition as a request to remove the Hadley Salvation Army farmland Site GB8 from the local plan consultation and any future local plan, as we strongly object to any housing development on this farmland. Members, it is important to look closely at the way in which the petition is worded, because that determines whether the call to action is something which this council can legally do. The council is being asked by the signatories to the petition to remove site GB8, firstly from the local plan consultation and secondly from any future local plan. Turning then to the first part of the call to action in the petition, which is that the council should remove site GB8 from the local plan consultation. Members, you'll be aware that Regulation 18 consultation has already closed, so the only consultation to which the call to action can apply is the Regulation 19 consultation, which procedurally follows a decision of full council to approve the draft Castle Point plan for submission to government. The second part of the call to action in the petition is that the council should remove the site from the future local plan. So in reality, the call to action is asking members to take site GB8 out of the plan making process now, so that it doesn't fall to be considered as part of the Castle Point plan and any resulting Regulation 19 consultation. Members, that is what it says in the report. Since publication of the report, however, I have been approached by the petition organiser, who has confirmed that the intention of the call to action is that site GB8 be taken out of any future local plan prepared by any future configuration of this council, effectively in perpetuity. As I just mentioned, the approval or not of the draft local plan is a matter for full council, but full council cannot act outside of the statutory requirements of the local plan making process. That statutory process must be followed correctly, as otherwise the legality and the efficacy of the entire Castle Point plan will be compromised, and the council would expose itself not only to a risk of judicial review by any aggrieved promoter, but also risk the plan being found unsound for procedural reasons. The draft Castle Point plan is scheduled as per the local development scheme approved previously by full council to come back to this chamber for decision in January. And that is why, members, you have no option this evening other than to take no further action in respect of the petition. And turning to the issue of future local plans, as described to me by the petition organiser, members, it is a fundamental premise of law that a council cannot bind a future decision of another council at some indeterminate point in the future. It is always open to a future council to overturn decisions of a previous one. Indeed, this council has already done just that. So whilst I thank the petition organiser for his clarification, it does not change the position that the council must follow the prescribed legal process for bringing forward the draft Castle Point plan. Members, that does not mean that the voices of the subscribers to the petition fall on deaf ears. It is, of course, open to members to acknowledge the strength of feeling and the commitment of residents who signalled the call, who signed the call to action. The petition's call to action does reference material planning considerations in terms of the protection of farmland and the protection of open spaces. And fortunately, these are the same issues which were identified by the public engagement as part of the Regulation 18 consultation. Indeed, 39% of the responses to the Regulation 18 consultation were from residents in the Hadley area, and additionally, responses were also received from residents living in neighbouring Leigh-on-Sea. Material considerations raised during the consultation covered not only the loss of agricultural land and the loss of public open space, but also issues related to green belt impact, landscape impact, the impact on heritage and wildlife, and on transport and infrastructure capacity. And members, on that basis, you can be reassured that notwithstanding that the petition was submitted after the Regulation 18 consultation period had closed, that all the comments submitted by the residents as part of that consultation will be taken into consideration as part of the plan preparation process. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Blackwell, as leader, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to stay seated. Madam Mayor, yes, I would like to say a few words. Madam Mayor, I've been on this council now nearly 29 years, and I can say one thing. In those 29 years, and all my members of the Canby Independent Party, over those years, we have voted against every single development which has come before us on Greenbelt. We will not ever change those attitudes or our opinions. I will say this also, is that the People's Independent Party stood on a main mandate to protect Castle Point's Greenbelt. They have not changed their opinion, and that is their mandate. I would just like to remind people of one thing. 2 years ago, the Canby Independent Party and the People's Independent Party went in a coalition. The first thing we had to do in that coalition was when we was presented with the previous Conservative plan, which showed 13 sites of Greenbelt in this borough down for development. Those 13 sites across the whole borough, over 5,000 houses. We made a decision to withdraw that local plan because we're determined as a local authority to protect all the greenfield sites in this borough. And I say to everybody here tonight, our attitudes are not changed, and we'll do our utmost as a local authority to protect all the greenfields in Castle Point. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. So can I ask, will you be moving the recommendation?
I would move the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
That's set out in paragraph 3.1. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gibson?
Yes, I'll happily second the motion, Madam Mayor. And if you may, Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Kate Knott wanted to say a couple of words.
Of course.
Thank you.
Councillor Knott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to thank the CEO on behalf of myself and my fellow ward councillors for making the situation clear regarding the legal powers that the council has regarding its response to the petition that relates to the Salvation Army land in my ward. Also, can I thank the leader for his words just now, with which I concur. I'm grateful also for the confirmation that the draft plan will be presented next month to the full council. This will, as I'm sure, put an end to much speculation. Madam Mayor, my thanks also goes to the members on the Castle Point Plan Board that have been working so hard to prepare a sound plan. A plan that I am confident will take into account the views of all residents, however they were expressed, and including those that responded to the public consultation that we undertook earlier in the year. I thank all the residents that have taken the time to express their views. Madam Mayor, over this last year or so, the Council has robustly defended all areas of the Green Belt throughout our whole borough, defending and winning appeal by developers. We have kept our election promises. It's in all of our DNA. It's in my DNA as a representative for Hadley St James to defend the Greenbelt, and I'm confident that looking forwards we will continue to do so. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, are there any other comments or questions? So we've no more speakers. Members, we have a recommendation to note the contents of the petition but take no further action in respect of this petition. I'll move to the vote. If I can have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion. That's unanimous, and so that is agreed. So we now move to agenda item 9, which is reports from the Cabinet and committees to Council. Members, there are 2 reports from the Licensing Committee held on the 14th of November. I will ask Councillor John Knott, Chairman of the Licensing Committee, to introduce them. 9(1), which is the report of the Statement of Licensing Policy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, members. The Licensing Committee reviewed the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy at a meeting on the 14th of November this year, and the report that was considered by the committee is attached in Appendix A. During that review, the committee noted the amendments that had been made to the Statement of Licensing Policy following the period of public consultation. That public consultation took place between the 18th of July and the 9th of September. It asked that a reference be included in the statement to relevant schemes aimed at supporting anyone feeling vulnerable when socialising at licensed premises. And I'd just like to thank Councillor Dearson for his suggestion about having that included, and also with regard to the Ask for Angela scheme. Thank you. Appendix B sets out the final statement of licensing policy, which incorporates this amendment, and the Council is asked to approve the statement of licensing policy for adoption. And members, I would therefore like to move a recommendation that Council approves the statement of licensing policy for adoption as attached at Appendix B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, there is one recommendation set out in paragraph 4.1 to approve the Statement of Licensing Policy attached at Appendix B. I will move the recommendation. No, sorry. Who is moving the recommendation? Councillor Knott, you've moved and we need a seconder. So, Councillor Palmer's seconding. Members, are there any questions? So I will move to the vote. If I can have a show of hands of those in favour of the motion. I believe that's unanimous, and that is agreed. Thank you, Council. Councillor Knott, will you please introduce item 9.2 relating to the gambling licensing policy statement?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, it's been a busy time for the Licensing Committee. And we reviewed the Council's Statement of Gambling Licensing Policy on the 14th of November, and the report that was considered by the committee is attached to Appendix A. The committee noted that no amendments were made following the period of public consultation that took place from the 18th of July to the 9th of September. And Appendix 2 sets out the final statement of the gambling licensing policy. And members, just before moving the recommendation, I would just like to give my personal thanks to the Assistant Director on behalf of myself and the committee for the hard work she put into getting that policy done in a timely manner. I know you were spinning a lot of plates, so we are grateful to you. So, members, I would like now to move a recommendation, please, that the Council approves the Statement of Gambling Policy, Licensing Policy, for adoption, as set out in Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Palmer again, thank you. Members, are there any questions? Okay, so I will move to the vote. Can we have a show of hands of those in favour of the motion? That's unanimous, and that is agreed. Thank you, Council. Moving on to agenda item 10, consideration of the need for a community governance review. Members, we have a report from the Assistant Director, Legal and Democratic Services providing advice to the Council on community governance reviews. Ms Law, if you could introduce the report to Council, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to advise the Council on matters to consider in relation to the undertaking of a community governance review under the Local Government and Public Involvement in Health Act 2007. If the Council agrees to undertake a community governance review, it must agree the terms of reference as set out in Appendix 1 and commence the process to recommend changes, if any, that are required to the governance arrangements for the parish areas of the Council to reflect the identity and interests of local communities. Community governance reviews provide an opportunity for the Council to review and make changes to the community governance within their areas. The 2007 Act provisions are intended to improve the development and coordination of support for citizens and community groups so that they can make the best use of empowerment opportunities. As part of the process, the Council must also have regards to the statutory guidance issued by the Boundary Commission and the Government in 2010. The legal requirement is that the Council should consider whether a community governance review is needed. There is no legal obligation to carry out a review, but the Council must act reasonably and in line with the statutory guidance when making its decision. The purpose of the review is to ensure community governance and that it reflects the identities and interests of the community in that area, is effective and convenient, and takes into account any non-parish arrangements for the purposes of community representation. The Council has the power under the Act to enable it to recommend, following the review, creating, merging, abolishing, naming of parishes, electoral arrangements and grouping arrangements. The Council has not carried out a review since the inception of Canvey Island Town Council since 2006. It would therefore be appropriate for the Council to consider conducting a review for the Canvey Island Town Council ahead of the Town Council elections in 2027. In 2023, the Boundary Commission for England undertook a review of the Council's electoral arrangements and made recommendations to the warding arrangements for the Town Council. However, they have no powers to implement those changes, and any changes could only be considered by this Council through a community governance review. The terms of reference is set out in Appendix 1, and the Council agrees to undertake a review. And if the Council agrees to undertake a review, the document must be approved by Council this evening. The terms of reference sets out how the Council will carry out the review and contains an outline timetable. It should be noted that by carrying out a review, members, it's not the final decision to make changes in governance arrangements. The Council has a duty to consider whether or not to make changes, but does not prejudge the final outcome. A full public consultation exercise would need to be carried out, and any representations made will have to be taken into account. Council is also asked to delegate to myself, in consultation with the Leader and Deputy Leader, the authority to make the necessary amendments, such as attaching the relevant maps to the terms of reference following tonight's decision. Madam Mayor, the Council is asked to consider the recommendations in paragraph 3.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Law. Councillor Gibson, as Deputy Leader, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the Leader was going to speak first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to say I welcome the government's review. I think it's an opportunity for especially for Canvey Island Town Council to show the exceptional work they do in the community, and so I fully support the government's review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just briefly, I mean, I've seen the report, I've looked at it, I spoke to the members, we spoke to residents and other sort of community partners, and at this stage we don't feel that there's a need to have a parish councils on the mainland, and I'll support the Leader with going for the Canvey Island option. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So can I ask who will be moving the motion?
I would, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would move option 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Members, would anyone like to comment or ask a question? Okay, so Council, we have a motion to undertake a community governance review for Canvey Island only. If I can have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion. That is unanimous. And so we're not going, pardon me, bear with me, members. Thank you. So, so we have an agreement for the motion. So, Councillor Blackwell, would you, as leader, like to move the recommendation 4 and 5 as set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would like to move the recommendation set out in those paragraphs. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Gibson, will you be seconding?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'll gladly second the motion. Thank you.
Okay, members, are you happy for us to vote for these all together? If so, if I can have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion. So that is unanimous. Thank you, Council, and that is agreed. So moving on to item 11, which is the implementation of changes to the electoral register. Members, we have a report relating to amendments required to the electoral register to incorporate boundary changes to Essex County Council's electoral divisions, and I will invite the Chief Executive to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, this report comes to you this evening in my capacity as the Electoral Registration Officer. Following the boundary changes for Essex County Council, it was necessary to update the electoral register in preparation for county elections next May. And although the borough retains 5 county divisions, they've been renamed Canvey Island East, Canvey Island West, Hadley, South Benfleet and Thundersley, and the boundaries have changed. Paragraph 5.4 of the report explains this has no logistical impact for 4 polling districts which are affected by the boundary changes. However, polling district AY1, which is within a single ward for borough elections, is bisected by the new division changes and will therefore span 2 divisions for county elections. This therefore means that I'm required to create 2 new polling districts, AY1T for the district that falls within the Thundersley division, and AY1H for the polling district that falls within the Hadley division. I'm required by law to ensure that each polling district has a polling station, and so that means I had to consider the impact of the changes for polling district AY1. By far, the easiest and most logical solution was to reconfigure polling arrangements at Richmond Hall, because although it means that voters will vote on different sides of the hall, depending on whether it's a county election or a borough election, at least they are going to the same venue. And we will ensure that additional staff will be available at Richmond Hall to make sure that voters get to the right polling place. So members, for that reason, there isn't an alternative. This is the exercise of my legal powers as Electoral Registration Officer, and so I'm simply asking you to endorse this decision as per the recommendation. If you have any questions on technical detail as per the changes or relating to what it might mean for the elections or for postal addresses, please can I suggest that these are raised with the elections team outside of this meeting, firstly because I don't have that level of detail available to me, and secondly because it's actually not strictly relevant to this decision. So I'm grateful to you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. So, Councillor Blackwell, would you, as leader, move the recommendation to Council as set out in paragraph?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
3.1.
Yes, I would like to move the recommendation set out in paragraph 3.1.
And Councillor Gibson, will you be seconding?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Members, we have a motion for debate. Would anyone like to speak on the recommendation? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just ask for a clarification in the report, page 2, paragraph 4.3. It says 4 polling districts in Benfleet, open brackets, specify these, please. Can you just clarify what we're specifying there? Thank you.
Those are the four referenced in paragraph 5.4.
No further questions, so I will move to the vote. If I can have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion. That is unanimous, thank you members, and that is agreed. Next up, item 12. We have changes to the Council's contract procedure rules. Members, we have a report from the Assistant Director for Finance and Procurement seeking Council's approval to make changes to the Council's contract procedure rules. Mr Wasco, if you would like to introduce the report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as has just been said, this report's to seek approval for changes to the Council's constitution. The contract procedure rules form part of the constitution. This is to enable readiness for the introduction of the Procurement Act 2023, which will go live on the 24th of February 2025. The introduction of the Act is largest overhaul we've had in public procurement since public contract procedures for 2015. And there's some four main objectives. First is to have simplified procedures and reduce complexity. There's going to be much more emphasis on transparency with more detailed requirements around the reporting and publication of procurement information. It aims to remove the barriers for small and medium-sized businesses. And lastly, there's a new national central digital platform that will be introduced. This will give benefits for all the suppliers because it means they can be registered in one place, and therefore they will receive notifications of any tenders that suit their area of business. It's important to note the existing contract procedure rules will apply for any procurement started prior to the introduction of the Act on the 24th of February next year, and the new rules will only apply for anything that starts from that date. The detail of all the changes is outlined in Appendix A. It shows very clearly what the existing wording is, what the new wording needs to be, and the reason for changes. I don't propose to go through those in detail, Madam Mayor, but there's a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Blackwell, would you like to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I do, I would also just like to say that this administration had one thing we wanted to do, and that was to help local businesses. And the one thing we were keen on was to help local businesses in this borough to be able to tender for local job, local firm, local works in this council. And what this change does, it gives the opportunity for smaller companies as well as larger companies, local, to be able to tender for works in Castle Point. So that was the one big thing we were keen on doing. So I'm pleased that it's going forward, and I'm quite happily move the recommendation in paragraph 3.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gibson will be seconding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we have a motion for debate. Would anyone like to speak on Councillor Blackwell's motion? Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Leader, I would just like to ask regarding the digital platform, to make absolutely clear, do businesses need to pay to join that? Is there a fee? Because it might be restrictive to some sole traders.
Am I deferring to Mr Wasco for that?
Thank you. I do not believe there is a fee, but we are still awaiting all of the final details from government on what central digital platform will entail.
Okay, we have no further questions. So if I can have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Council. So that is agreed. Next, item 13 is the Deputy Portfolio Holder for Strategic Planning. Members, we have a report seeking Council's approval to the appointment of a Deputy Portfolio Holder for Strategic Planning. Ms Law, if you'd like to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Constitution itself includes a provision for the leader to appoint portfolio holders, but it's currently silent on appointments of deputy portfolio holders. Currently, the deputy leader balances his role with a busy portfolio for strategic planning. And this is especially so because of the work that is currently underway to ensure that the council remains on target for submission for the final castle point plan. If the council decides to appoint a deputy portfolio holder, it would be appropriate to ask the independent remuneration panel that will be conducting the review of members' allowances and report to the council with its recommendations to include this new role within its review. Madam Mayor, the recommendations for this report is set out in paragraph 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Law. Councillor Blackwell, would you like to move?
Thank
the
you, Madam Mayor. I'm
recommendation?
more than happy to move the recommendation set out in paragraph 3.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gibson, will you be seconding?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will second the motion. And if you may, if I could just say a couple of words, because it's, I forget dates, but I think it's been along the lines of 2 years now. And I've been appointed as Deputy Leader of Council with my portfolio holder as strategic planning. I remember the new CEO at the time, Angela, saying that that's going to be quite a workload. I've never been one that's good to take advice, and it's taken me the best part of 18 months to probably have to admit that Angela was right. It has been a huge workload. And I'd like to say for the last, for a day dot, Tim has been a huge help with the technical details, the local plan, greenbelt assessments, etc., etc. And I think it'll just make it easier if it's official. You can attend meetings in an official capacity and all the rest of it. So I'd like to, hopefully you will all support it. And yes, Madam Mayor, I'll second the motion.
So, members, we have a motion for debate. Would anyone like to speak on Councillor Blackwell's motion? Okay. So we will move to a vote, and if I can have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion. Another unanimous, and so that is agreed. Thank you, Council. Next is item 15, the Constitution, revision to Officer Scheme of Delegation, Assistant Director for Environmental Health, Licensing and Community. I beg your pardon. One moment. No, I know I like a speedy meeting, but I don't usually miss out entire items. So, item 14, appointment of Development Management Committee Vice Chair. So I will invite Ms Law to introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sadly, due to ill health, Councillor Gregg is no longer able to continue as the Vice Chair to the Development Management Committee. The appointment of Vice Chair can only be made at this full council, and the leader has nominated Councillor Huntman. Madam Mayor, the recommendation is as set out in paragraph 3 of the report.
Thank you, Ms Law. Councillor Blackwell, will you be...
Madam Mayor, more than happy to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gibson, will you be seconding?
I'll happily second that.
That's Councillor Bowker is seconding. Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? So I will move to vote. Those in favour, if I can have a show of hands for the motion. That's unanimous and agreed. Thank you, Council. Now we'll have item 15. Constitution revision to Officer Scheme of Delegation, Assistant Director, Environmental Health, Licensing and Community. Ms Law, again, if you would like to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to agree to a revision to the current Officer Scheme of Delegations relating to the Assistant Director of Environmental Health, Licensing and Community, to clarify the provisions set out in paragraphs 26.8.8 and Appendix E of the Scheme of Delegations for approval. The scheme of delegation forms one of the Council's governance documents and sets out the responsibilities that are delegated to Council's officers. It is reviewed to ensure it reflects current legislation and the structure of the Council. The current delegation contains some errors which must be rectified in order for the officers to be able to carry out their duties properly. Article 5 of the Constitution stipulates that only Council can adopt and approve changes to the Constitution, and therefore Council is asked to approve the recommendation as set out in paragraph 3 of this report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Law. Councillor Blackwell, will you be moving the recommendation?
Madam Mayor, before I move the recommendation, I would like to call on Councillor Tom Gibson to come forward.
Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Madam Mayor. With your permission, I just had a brief amendment that I would like to move to this motion, if that's okay.
Yes, please share your proposal.
Excellent, thank you. So, just for a bit of background, it had originally been planned to raise this during the course of the upcoming task and finish group scrutinising the taxi and private hire vehicle licensing policy. However, I believe as we're on the subject, it warrants discussion at this point, as it appears the power in question lies in the Constitution or this policy rather than the licensing policy itself, and so may necessitate an amendment at this stage. First of all, speaking broadly on licensing, can I say what a breath of fresh air it's been having Jeanette Parker-East come in as Assistant Director. It's clear to see how determined she is to transform Castle Point's licensing department, which has, sadly over the years, built up a reputation as being somewhat obtuse and unaccountable. I believe that Jeanette is exactly the sort of person we need to be heading up the department, and I've no doubt that she will oversee delivery of service that our customers, drivers, operators and all other licence holders deserve. However, cases have been brought to the attention of the Licensing Committee recently, where taxi and private hire drivers have had their licences suspended for complaints such as rudeness to customers and on suspicion of driving on an expired MOT, which, in itself, if they were caught in the act, would necessitate immediate suspension. However, this driver in question had obtained a valid MOT certificate at the time of suspension. If I can draw members' attention back to page 5 of the Statement of Licensing Policy we approved earlier in the meeting, it states that any enforcement should be, among other qualifiers, proportionate and targeted, placing emphasis upon the need to seek to mitigate any side effects from any enforcement action taken. Although I believe that this was written in the context of premises and alcohol licences, our enforcement principles should be consistent across the licensing department. And I believe that the suspensions that I've just mentioned were neither proportionate nor took into account the full effects of the suspension. There is no risk to public safety if a driver is alleged to have been rude to a customer, and so immediate suspension in reaction to this complaint is disproportionate. Further, there is no risk to public safety if a vehicle, even though it is suspected to have historically been driven without one, is subject of a valid MOT certificate at the time of enforcement. Immediate suspension, in this case, was, in my view, not preventative but rather punitive. Of course, both these instances warrant thorough investigation, and it's right that if the driver involved is found to have been in breach of any rule or policy by a driver's panel, then they should, of course, be sanctioned accordingly. However, unless there is a clear and present risk to public safety, so for example, a current serious vehicle defect, allegation of sexual or violent offence, meter irregularities, for example, a driver should be able to continue operating until the case has been heard fully. It's unfair and indeed disproportionate to suspend the driver for any lesser offence and remove their ability to earn a living until any driver's panel hearing takes place, which can be weeks after the initial suspension. In my view, these cases demonstrate officers overstepping in their exercise of their powers to suspend. Therefore, a check on these powers needs to be in place. With this in mind, I'd like to move an amendment to the proposed wording to allow the chair of the licensing committee, or a member of the committee temporarily nominated by the chair should they be unavailable, to have mandatory sign-off on any suspension of taxi or private hire vehicle licences until the alleged transgression, unless the alleged transgression represents a clear risk to public safety in the form of serious vehicle defect, sexual or violent assault or harassment, or irregularities regarding the taximeter, as I've said beforehand. I believe this can be achieved with a very simple change of wording. In between section 5 and 6 on page 5 of the proposed amendments in the appendix, it reads, in consultation with the chair of the licensing committee, to, and then goes on to list a number of enforcement mechanisms. I would like to propose that this is amended to read with the express sign-off of the chair of the licensing committee, or a nominated member of the licensing committee, to. Going forward, this would allow the committee to maintain an enhanced check on this officer power and ensure that such excesses as I have outlined do not occur in the future. With your permission, Madam Mayor, I would like to move the proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I ask for a seconder, I'm just going to check the wording on the amendment. One moment. Chief Executive, if you wouldn't mind proposing the wording.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. You referenced a particular part of the policy. If you could just repeat that for me, please, that would be helpful.
Of course I can. Just
Thank you.
get myself logged back in.
I'm scrolling at the same time as you were saying.
I've got it, Tom. It's fine.
Got it, yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, members, I believe that the recommendation, therefore, that currently reads, scroll, to approve the revised officer scheme of delegation for the Assistant Director, Environmental Health Licensing and Community, as set out in Appendix 1 to this report, subject to amendment to paragraph 5. I just want to be clear of what the amendment is so that you can make the vote on the amendment, Madam Mayor. Yes. So it's so subject to paragraph 5 of paragraph 26.8.8 brackets 5 close brackets. Somebody writing this down. Being amended to read in consultation with and with the express approval of the chair of the licensing committee.
Is that in agreement for your proposed amendment?
That is an agreement, yeah, certainly within the spirit of what I'm trying to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Executive. So, members, do we have a seconder for this amendment?
I'll second it, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Knott, thank you. So, members, we have an amendment to vote on. If I can have a show of hands for those in favour of the amendment. Do we need a name? We don't need a name. Oh, I beg your pardon. Would anyone like to speak on the amendment before we vote? Councillor Knott.
Madam Mayor, can I just confirm, with my express permission, but with a nominated, if I'm unavailable, there'd be a nominated person. Was that in the actual final wording?
Of course, yeah, sorry, that was in my original wording. I'm not sure if it might have been...
Or nominated.
Or nominated member, yeah. Thank you.
That's for clarity. I'll ask the Chief Executive just to read that out for clarity.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the recommendation is as per paragraph 3.1 with the addition of the words subject to amendment to paragraph 26.8.8 brackets 5 amended to read in consultation with and with the express approval of the chair of the licensing committee or a nominated member of the licensing committee, and the nomination should belong to the chair. So it is his nominee, their nominee.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Warren Gibson, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Only a few words. I mean, to me, I was quite surprised when this came up because many years ago now, probably about 14 years ago, I was actually the chairman of the Castle Point Active Carriage Association. And that always was the case. To get suspended, you had to commit a serious offence, be a threat to the public, have a dangerous vehicle, or whatever. I fully support the amendment because we can't go down a road where you could pick up a customer, you turn up 10 minutes late through no fault of your own, they could phone in, write in, make a complaint, and you can get suspended. And you could be off work for 4 or 5 weeks until they set up the appeal panels. But I want to reassure members that Licensing, like Tom said, Jeanette, and I think John mentioned it, Jeanette's doing a great job. Things are moving forwards. I think we had a task and finish group yesterday, but I want to reassure members, this is not going to be a case of where you're going to be phoning up and taxis are going to be turning up with wheels hanging off. Yeah, it ain't going to happen. It's going to be safe, it's going to be monitored, everything's going to be done, but it's just a case that recently we've had a few, and to me, one's too many, but we've had 2 or 3 where drivers are having their livelihoods taken off them and have to wait, sometimes up to 6 weeks. So I just want to say I fully support the amendment. I'll be voting for it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
There seemed to be Mr. Clarification tonight. Just looking at Appendix 1, which we've got in our pack, can you just clarify what paragraph we're amending? Because 26 on the version I've got says to exercise stray dog function.
I believe that it's on page 5, 26.8.8 on the following page between brackets 5 and 6. On page 5 of item 15. Are we clear, Councillor?
Yes, we are. It seems there's 2 different parts of the document labelled as 26. So,
Okay. Is everyone clear which part we are amending? Proposing to amend? Okay. So, any further comments or questions? So we have an amendment to agree. If those in favour of the amendment, please show of hands. That's unanimous and agreed. So we will go back to the original vote, for which we have. We don't need to do we need to remove the motion?
You need to retake. So you've approved.
So we've approved the amendment. So we need to move the amended motion, please. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm more than happy to move the amended motion.
And seconded by Councillor Knott. Thank you. Any comments or questions, members? So show of hands, those in favour of the amended motion. That is unanimous and agreed. Thank you, members. So we are now on item 16 and we have a report from the Leader of the Council, Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'd like to give an update on some of the work the Cabinet's been doing recently. So on October the 16th, the Cabinet agreed to use the UK Shared Prosperity Funding to deliver a programme of capital improvements to improve in the existing Thursday market on Canvey Island and to introduce a new market on Saturdays from spring 2025. The Deputy Leader responded to the Essex County Council's consultation on Essex Transport Strategy, and the Cabinet also agreed that the County Council should be asked to involve Castle Point Borough members in the development of an Essex Transport Strategy, including the area-based plan that covers Castle Point. The Deputy Leader responded to the Government's consultation on the proposed reforms in the National Planning Policy Framework and other changes to the planning system, and the Cabinet also agreed to respond to the Essex Local Nature Recovery Strategy consultation. On the 20th of November, the Cabinet agreed to establish the Housing Improvement Programme. The Housing Improvement Programme Board and Housing Improvement Programme Team also agreed to allocate £165,000 in the current financial year to fund the initial stages of the Housing Improvement Programme. The Cabinet approved an action plan to address the recommendations arising from the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge in September 2024. The Cabinet also agreed that a tourist and culture strategy be commissioned for the Borough, and also agreed that biodiversity report should be prepared as a part of the Council's approach to meeting its duties under the Environmental Act 2021. On a lighter note, members, most people will have seen or heard about an actor called Danny Dyer. No, I didn't. I had to ask the wife who he was. I don't watch the soaps. And my wife said, you must know who he is, and I said I didn't. Anyway, the actor Danny Dyer, filming on Canvey Island for the popular Sky show Mr. Big Stuff. What you might not know is that the economic development officers in this council were instrumental in working with the Essex Film Office to arrange for Sky to undertake the filming. As a result of their work, the local businesses directly benefited. We got £541 income to the council for issuing a filming permit. 30 cast members stayed at the Oyster Fleet Hotel, and 20 to 25 crew staying at the Rayleigh Weir Premier Inn. A fee was paid to Monica Leisure, who supplied lunches for all the cast and the crew. A £500 goodwill donation to the Canvey Archives was also, and local taxi firms done well out of it, because they were used to running the cast and the crew around the island. The daily value of filming to a local economy is estimated to be around £12,000 a day, and from the information we gained for this film shoot, the figure is broadly accurate. This is all a part of the work which the economic development team are doing to promote our borough and generate investment. I will be asking Councillor Palmer, as the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth and Action, to bring a report to Cabinet in the new year so that members can understand more about the good work they do. Thank you, members. That concludes my update, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackwell. Item 17, notice... Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Leader. That's really a good news story for Canvey Island and for Castle Point Council. Obviously, my portfolio means that I've had a big input into this with the officers, and it's something that's new to this administration. The previous administration paid lip service to it, but we've actually done something about it. Using government levelling up money, we're able to fund this now to coming up to March next year, and I hope we can get some more money to keep it going. But this is a good news story. I have known of Danny Dyer. He comes from my neck of the woods, and my niece was in his class at school. So I do know of Danny Dyer. And the £500 that Jan Penn, another good friend of ours, is going to be very, very welcome. And she's the person to go to if you're doing anything historical in the area and you need to know. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor, and I will second that. Jan does a wonderful job at the archives. Brilliant stuff. Okay, so moving on to item 17, notices of motion. Members, there are none. Item 19, we have an organisational restructure service review outcome. If I could ask Michaela Smith if you could introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, this report is to present a severance package that has arisen out of a result of a compulsory redundancy that exceeds £100,000. The pay policy statement specifies that for severance packages of £100,000 and above relating to compulsory redundancy, these will be presented for noting by full council. This redundancy is compulsory following the outcome of a restructure as part of a service review, in which the post holder's job was deleted from the structure and no suitable alternative roles could be identified within the council. You'll note in the report that the majority of the total payment that is due is direct to Essex Pension Fund as part of pension strain, and in line with the pay policy, it's proposed within a recommendation in the report that council notes the dismissal by means of compulsory redundancy of the individual identified in confidential Appendix A. Thank you.
Thank you, Smith. Members, before I open this up for debate, if I can just remind you that there is an exempt appendix for this item. If you do need to refer to this appendix or ask a specific question on it, will you please let me know now, as we will have to ask the public to leave, and I will make the session closed to discuss that. So, members, do we have any comments or questions on the report? Okay, so members, is that noted? Wonderful. So, Council, we have no other business this evening. I thank you very much. And it is 8 o'clock. I declare the meeting closed and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.